to respect her husband. Respect her husband. Just like the church respects God, respects Christ. The same respect that God wanted Eve to have for Adam's views. The same respect that God wanted Israel to have for God's views, which were reflected in the covenant document, which is the Torah. That same respect wife must show to her husband and must respect his words, his opinions, his views, and his love for her. So now we see that this is one small aspect of the household codes. There is more to come in the household codes. And we see, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. So this is the fifth commandment, and the fifth commandment carries with it a promise. What is the promise? Long life and lifelong prosperity. What is the fifth commandment? Honor your parents. So there are in Christian households children, of course, and children, they have a role to play. They are positionally not equal to their parents. They are lower than their parents. They must obey their parents in the Lord, and they must honor their parents in the Lord, so that they would have long life and lifelong prosperity. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Do not make them worked up. Fathers, do not make them angry by bringing new disciplinary actions and agendas. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. You share the message of God, and they would want to change themselves, just like how I am doing it for you. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear. And there are slaves in the household. Slaves must obey and respect and fear with a sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. So we are all slaves of Christ in a sense, right? All humans. So we are slaves of God, we are slaves of Christ. We have reverence for Christ and we obey him because he also loves us. In the same way, slaves, you must obey your earthly masters with respect, fear, and sincerity of heart. You need to be authentic. You need to have a sincerity in whatever you do for them. Obey them not only to win their favor when their eye is on you, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from your heart. So whatever you do, do it authentically. Do it from your heart. Don't do it to just show them that you are doing things correctly. Serve wholeheartedly as if you were serving the Lord, not people. When you do acts of service for your master, for your master's family, do it wholeheartedly, with your whole heart. Because you know that the Lord will reward each one for whatever good they do, whether they are slave or free. There is a rewarder, and that rewarder is not your master. There is another master, the master of your master, who would reward you according to what you have done. So don't do anything just to get some flattery, just to get some commendation from your master, just to show them that you are doing your work properly, but do everything from your heart, wholeheartedly, with a great devotion and care, as if you are serving the Lord. You're not serving that particular family or that master. You are serving the Lord when you do everything with sincerity. And then again, see, in those household codes of pagans and Romans, there was no role assigned for the masters. Masters were not supposed to behave in a certain way. Whichever way they want, they could behave. But here, Paul gives them a responsibility, a role to play. He says, masters, treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them, since you know that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven, and there is no favoritism with him. God does not show favoritism or partiality, so you also should not show favoritism or partiality among the slaves and servants who are with you. This is something very significant within the biblical framework, that there should not be any partiality, favoritism, nepotism kind of things. Again, he's saying that when you treat your servants, treat them with love, care, and respect. Do not threaten them since you know that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven. So during those times, I believe the masters used to be very rude and harsh with the slaves, and they would threaten them if they do something, some mistake or something wrong. And the slaves could sometimes lose their works, sometimes lose their body parts, sometimes lose their lives. But here Paul is saying, do not threaten your slaves, because remember, there is a master who is a common master for you and for them. They are also equal human beings in reality. Though in your system they are working as your slaves and servants, they are equal in God's sight, and he is the master of all. So Paul is subtly subverting those hierarchies within the Roman household, within the pagan household, by helping Christians to understand that they need to be gentle, humble, compassionate, and forgiving to others within their household. So what is Paul doing? Paul is undercutting the whole system. He's removing the base, the foundation of the thing upon which the Roman system of hierarchy would stand. And eventually we know slavery would come to an end. It is these kind of verses, and particularly the letter of Philemon, that many people who fought against slavery used. And eventually we know Abraham Lincoln did a great thing in America, and he gave equal rights, and there were no slaves anymore. And he was a Republican. Remember, he also was a conservative, and he was a Christian. He wanted to exercise it in a Christian way. He didn't do it because of Karl Marx. He did it because of Jesus. So remember, it is the Bible that brings more equality, more love, more kindness, more authenticity, more holiness into this world. So we look at the entire household code and we see that Paul is using the same positional structures. He's not changing anything. He didn't say that the master should not be called master, he should be called some other name. Like in certain ministries, they do not use the name pastor, they would be using elder, they would be using bishop, they will be using some other name to represent the leader. Paul doesn't do any of those things. Paul doesn't change the name or the designation of that leader in the house. He just identifies that, okay, there is a master, there are slaves, and the master is the head of the family. He has a family to take care of. He is a husband, he has a wife, and then he has children. This is the whole structure. And within this structure, there are interactions happening, interpersonal interactions happening, which were based on a different set of values before. So just like how he borrows that scaffolding of Stoic thought, which was virtue and vice, here he borrows the scaffolding of the household codes of the Romans and infuses this scaffolding with the Christian values, Christian meaning. So what he does is, see, now of course you are the husband, but you are not Caesar. You are husband. You are not the Rama or Krishna who has a lot of authority over his wife and can demand them to do anything he wants them to do. You are like Christ. You are like Christ. You are supposed to behave like Christ, who gave himself up for the body. You have a role to play that is not the role of a master lording over others, but it is a role of a servant suffering for the sake of others. Think about it. It's completely changed. It's like, when you touch this, you feel like it's a dangerous thing. If you are a husband, it is very dangerous. And if you are a pastor or a master of a house kind of a person who has children and everybody and slaves, then this whole chapter is very dangerous for you, because it requires a lot more from you than from others. It requires you to have a servant heart, servant attitude, a servant mentality, and you have to literally serve like Christ did. What did Christ do? He was in the highest heavens. He was at right hand of God. He is the most powerful entity, most powerful person, enjoying the most powerful position. He humbled himself. He became a human, lower than angels. He who had the ability to command the angels to do anything he wanted them to do, he was being tested and tempted by a fallen angel, the devil. He who had authority over death and life had to submit himself despite being righteous and holy. Unlike Adam and Eve, who invited death into their family by being selfish and greedy and unholy. Jesus, he, despite being holy and righteous and above death, somebody who had control over death and life, humbled himself. He submitted to death. Think about how much he has lowered himself. Not only did he submit to death, he submitted to a death which is the most pathetic death, the death with most suffering and the utmost insult, and that was the death upon the cross. Nobody would want a death upon a cross like a criminal, being hated by all people, being insulted by all people, being an embarrassment to his whole Israel, his whole family, his whole nation, his whole tribe. That kind of death. Jesus humbled himself and took it up. And this is how he served the body, which is Christ, followers who were there. Some of them were weeping, some of them were hiding themselves, lest they die like Jesus. Some of them were thinking whether he was the Messiah or not. Some of them had left the faith and sided with the opposite team, the Romans and the religious Jews. And some of them were thinking about the prophecies and promises that he gave, which were not yet fulfilled and which seemed to be empty, seemed to be futile, seemed to be meaningless, seemed to be never going to happen. And that is the sin that we have to remember when we remember how Christ humbled himself for his body. And then he forgave everyone, including Judas. He forgave upon the cross. Not only did he forgive, he knew God is angry. It is God's wrath that is reflecting upon people. The signs of wrath he could see. Earth was shaking. The sun became dark. Wrath of God everywhere in the Old Testament is mentioned in this way. People were afraid. The wrath of God was manifesting, but Jesus protected these people. He did not want God to come and destroy everybody. He did not want the angels to come and destroy everybody, like God had done in the past for Elijah and many others, when he killed the prophets of Baal and when he killed the servants of the kings who came to capture the prophet. But here, what did God do? God was so angry, the entire wrath, he poured it upon Jesus himself, who took the wrath of God and the insults of people, the hatred of people. That is how much he loved them, that he did not let them go out of his hands. He was still holding them, protecting them, even when he was suffering the burning, the wrath of God. He did not let go of them. He was holding Israel in his hands. But Israel did not know. Israel, particularly those people who were chosen to be his disciples, did not understand. They understood only when the Holy Spirit came upon them, that what Jesus had done was to bring the wrath of God to an end and to start a new chapter in Israel's history, in the history of humanity, to start a new chapter of a forgiven relationship which has been restored and renewed by the sending of God's presence back into God's people. This time not outside, but inside each and every individual who would be praying for the presence of the Holy Spirit in the upper room of Mark's house. And these people were filled with the Holy Spirit. And then they realized that what Jesus did for them was great. And they were overcome with gratitude for God. So much of gratitude for God that they started preaching. People who were so afraid of these Jewish people that they hid themselves in their room suddenly became powerful messengers of